This is Optometrists Building Empires, and I'm your host, Ankit Patel. Each week, we'll explore the journey of multi-practice ownership and leadership in optometry. Join us for insights and strategies from the top minds in our field. This show is sponsored by My Business Care Team. My Business Care Team helps your office increase revenues, reduce costs, and reduce staffing headaches. Let's build your empire together. I'm super excited to introduce to you all today's guest. He's a dedicated optometrist with a focus on ocular disease, myopia management, and optometric surgery. He's involved in professional organizations like the Wyoming Optometric Association and the AOA. He's a speaker at professional conferences, writer, and contributor to industry publications. His contributions to the field have earned him several accolades, including Wyoming Optometric Association's Young Optometrist of 2022. He's the owner and optometrist of Cheyenne Vision Clinic and Laramie Vision Clinic. Please welcome Dr. Joseph Munsell. Joseph, welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Yeah. And I really appreciate you having you on. Wyoming is one of those places that's beautiful. And I'm really glad we got to speak to an OD out there because I think you're going to talk about some really unique things that you're doing in the field. But before we jump into that, I don't want to get ahead of myself. Let's jump into my favorite question is, what was the most important thing that helped you grow your optometry empire?
Yeah, I think empire is a relative word, but I would say two main things. As far as our clinical success, I truly think it comes down to treating the patients the correct way, kind of meeting them where they're at. We've always said in our clinics that if you treat the patient right, you take care of the patient will take care of you. And so we always look through all of our decisions through that lens. How can we make things, more efficient for patients? How can we be more available for patients? And when we're bringing in technology, when we're bringing in services, we always look through that lens on just how we can make this experience better and more easily for the patients. Now, go off of that on the second part, for me personally, I would say, it's just being action oriented. Action drives results, action moves the needle. And, it's great to have theories and all these ideas on what you want to do, but unless you're executing and implementing, it doesn't really matter. So I would say just being action oriented throughout my career and my life so far has really helped with that. Now, of course, you have to have a direction. Otherwise, your actions are just being applied the wrong way. Right. And I think Warren Buffett, I think he is the one that said, it doesn't matter how fast you're running if you're running on the wrong road. So it's always important to have that vision and kind of the outline for where you want your life, where you want your practice to be, and then just making sure you take action to make those goals a reality.
I think that's really good insight. Back in my previous life, I was a Lean Six Sigma consultant for manufacturing companies, and they talk a lot. Lean is a methodology. Toyota Production System talks about putting the customer first and then designing the process around them and doing things that help that journey for the patient or the customer in the case of manufacturing. So it sounds like you kind of came across that through your own personal journey. Uh, Do you connect? Do you use the framework of the patient first mindset to figure out where you're going to improve? Is that how you kind of bounce ideas? Like, how do you know something? How do you know you're not on the wrong road?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. So we're patient centric. We care about patient experience and, you know, people probably define patient experience as in different ways, but, we always look at it as what's the journey that the patient takes in your office and essentially how does that make them feel with every single step? So we always find it important on whether it's a yearly basis or an every 6-month basis to essentially look at every aspect of where we interact with the patient and then make improvements from there. And so this starts with the website, right? I mean, is our website easily accessible to patients when they Google us? Are we the first person that comes up so they don't have to search through multiple areas? If not, work with your SEOs. And then what does our website look like? Is it easy to go through? Can you easily schedule appointments? Can you see who the doctors are, what services are provided? So, that starts there and it kind of works its way through the entire experience at our clinic. When they show up at our clinic in our parking lot, is it well lit? Is there parking spots? Are there weeds places? Are the windows clean? So when you show up at a business and it's not taken care of outside, I think it essentially shows probably the level of detail that you can expect on the inside. So we take it very serious on all these points of contact and making improvements as we go.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, you're going down to a whole nother level. Usually people, when they say patient experience, is in-office experience. You're talking about website, lighting. You know what? Even like, do we have too many weeds in the parking lot? Right.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool to see that level of detail. Um, Tell me a little bit more about the feeling you want people to have. Like, talk to me more about that. That's the first time I've heard that talked about in the optometry context. Is there specific emotions you want people to feel at each step of the way? Like, can you go into more detail about that?
Yeah, great question. So, our core value that we have at our clinics is called "Be Our Guest," right? I know it's kind of a play off of Beauty and the Beast, Disneyland type stuff, but essentially that's how it is. We want every patient to come into our clinic to feel like they're a guest at our home. So that means making sure the clinic's very clean and well picked up, making sure that they feel comforted when they're coming into our clinic, making sure they feel that they can trust us, that they feel confident in our abilities and our abilities to take care of them. And essentially just to make them feel, you know, cliche, but just to make them feel, more loved essentially as far as that we're taking care of them, we care about them, how they feel, how they look, and everywhere in between.
How do how would how do you know if they feel the right emotion? Like, what do you use to know, like, do we nail it on, did they feel welcome? Did they feel the thing that we wanted them to feel? How do you know that each part of the way?
Yeah, that's a great question because I mean, obviously it can be a lagging indicator, right? We need to know if what we're doing is working, and if it's not, how do we change it? So I think there's a couple of ways to do that. I think one is just to look at the amount of return patients you have, right? I mean, I think that's one of the easiest ways is are the patients you're seeing coming back next year and the year after and the year after? Another good way is are the people you're seeing, are they then referring their friends and their family to you? A lot of times when we get a patient and they're like, oh yeah, you saw my aunt Becky couple weeks ago, and she said you guys were just fantastic, and now she recommended you, so now we're coming in. So I think that's a very good indicator if your patients are willing to recommend you to their friends and family, because you don't want to make a bad recommendation, right? So I think that's a pretty good driver on the patient experience. Then of course, taking your feedback seriously. I mean, um, if you have really good reviews, that's fantastic. You're doing something right. And if you have areas in your reviews that are constant, could improve, obviously something needs to be addressed there. And, we take that seriously.
Okay. Um, Now as far as, what, is there anything faster? Like, how do I know if I want some, if I'm more instant gratification? I want to know if they actually did a good job the day of or right after the patient goes through some, like, a tech process. Are there things that you look at there? Like, how do I know the patient had a great experience with the tech or with the front desk? How does that work for you all?
Yeah, I think a lot of our patients, at least in Wyoming, the way that kind of our culture is out here, people are very honest. So, typically when I get into the room, patients will tell me, how the front desk was, how our technicians were. We serve as a teaching clinic here, so we have externs. So a lot of times they'll tell us how our externs do. And then when we drop our patients off to check out after they've used the optical, all of our receptionists, they always ask, Mrs. Jones, how was your exam today? And then that's a pretty quick feedback of like, oh, it was amazing. The doctor was great. The opticians were good. Or if they have something that they think could be better, they typically let us know right then. And then it's on the receptionist to tell our reception coordinator to kind of filtrate that to management going forward.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Um, and I guess, I think this is really interesting how you work through that because I know in our offices, uh, folks aren't as direct. So I'm just thinking to myself like, how would we do this? I think there's some really interesting ideas there. So what made you want to grow your businesses? Like, why expand? Why go to multiple locations? Tell me about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I think the first thing to know is, we had a smaller clinic here in our main location in Cheyenne. It was a 4,000 square foot, 3.5 doc clinic, and then in 2020 we bought a new building, remodeled it. Now it's an 18,000 square foot, 24 exam lane, 8 doctor clinic. So we grew quite large. And I think it's a combination. I think it's market fit. It's looking at what this current market demographics are asking for. And if it's there, which it was for us, the demand was there. It's essentially, once again, taking action, executing, and essentially growing so we can serve more of our population. When it comes to opening our second location, which is about 45 minutes away from our primary location, same thing. It was kind of a market fit. We were having multiple patients in that city drive to our Cheyenne location. And they were always telling us, hey, have you guys ever thought about opening a clinic over there? And once again, the reason is they were so used to the quality of service, the quality of products that we provided for them that they at the time just weren't necessarily getting over there. So once again, it was about finding those demands and then trying to meet them.
Okay. Excellent. And what did you run into that you didn't expect when you started growing? Like, what was something like, oh, wow, I didn't see that coming?
Yeah, growing, especially here in our Cheyenne location, growing to such a big clinic, there's good things, there's bad things, right? I mean, when you're scaling, it's always good to have the uh, economy of scale, the economics of scale, right? You get better buying groups, you get better discounts with vendors. You can kind of leverage your size a little bit better. So that part was great. Now, it came with some challenges too, right?
Yeah.
Being as big as we are now, everything gets magnified, right? If there's one small process that's not quite working as well, instead of that affecting 20 patients a day, that's affecting 120 patients a day. And so everything just more magnified. So it really became important to really look into our processes and really kind of fine tune those as much as we can, as well as really getting a good system of delegation in. And I know a lot of your guests talk about this with growth. Delegation is huge, right? I mean, and we were seeing that massively here because now we have this location, 35, 40 employees, 8 doctors. And so there can't really be one person doing everything. And so we had to create different divisions within our clinic with coordinators of that clinic that then feed up. So having a hierarchical structure really became important for us. And so there's just noticing those things and trying to essentially adapt as well as we can. And of course, there were some failures, things we learned from, and things we're getting better from.
Anything you'd want share as a lesson learned that you were like, oh, wow, this is something that was really important that I wish I had known? Maybe one of the failures or some of the successes. You're like, okay, maybe we should have done something sooner.
Yeah, I think one thing with our optical, coming from a smaller clinic, we had just our opticians, doing everything. They were ordering the glasses, they're helping the patient, they were checking and verifying in the back lab, they were edging. And so we are just having them do a lot of things. Now, we get, like I said, our optical probably has 180, 190 patient contacts a day, but that just wasn't feasible anymore. So we eventually separated it into we have an optical lab and we have floor opticians, and we have separate coordinators for each area to make sure that everything is just done to the quality that we want it to. I think once we made that change and kind of separated those roles, it really made things a lot easier optical wise.
That's a great question, a great insight. I think that we don't, and I don't think we've talked about as much on the other guest. But how do you know when a division of labor needs to happen? So just like you said, every opticians were doing everything front and back of the house. How do you know that you needed to break it up? What did you see that led you to that? What about other areas like text? Did you do that text, front desk, billing, filing? Were there other places that you did this? Because I imagine as you're growing, one person can do everything in the office and when you day one, but then you need more and more people and you split out the work. Talk to me about that a little bit. How you work through that?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, it came down to a couple of things. One is those staff members were becoming overwhelmed,
Mm.
right? I mean, they had to do so many tasks that things were falling behind. And so we're starting to see a drop in some of our services, the quality that we were providing. And of course, that's not how we operate. And so we knew that we had to change something to try to limit how much they're focusing on. And so they could go from focusing on 6 tasks to 3 tasks.
Mm.
And the more you can keep your attention on one thing, the better you're going to be at that. I mean, I think it's been proven now that multitasking really doesn't work, right? And so I think just getting these people focusing on a few tasks as much as they can and really excelling on those is hugely important for us. We also noticed that in a couple of different ways throughout the clinic. We were spending a lot of time on back end things. So insurance verification, ordering glasses, doing all those types of things. So one change that we've made this past year is we really utilized virtual assistants. to essentially take a lot of that back end admin off of our in person staff. We've noticed that's made a huge difference because now they're able to just focus on the patient in front of them, not have to worry about all the other back end stuff. So that has really increased our efficiency and honestly our employee satisfaction greatly.
Yeah, we saw some of the same when we started doing that as well. And
Yeah.
that kind of jumps into the next concept. Staffing. Staffing is challenging everywhere. I imagine Wyoming is tough there as well for staffing. How do you deal with staffing challenges? So one of the things is getting global resources. So virtual assistants or other folks outside the four walls. What else are you doing from a staffing perspective to help out?
Yeah, just like anywhere, staffing has been a hard point in our clinic, just like everywhere in the healthcare, honestly, everywhere in every field, every sector. So I can't say that we have a perfect solution to that. I do think the virtual assistant has made it drastically better. And then just trying to bring on enough people to kind of weather the storms when we have, because we're a military community, so we have an Air Force base here. So a lot of our employees come here, their spouses are in the military, and so they're here for 3 years, 4 years, and then they move. And so
Mm.
it's constantly we have just built-in turnover that way, and so it's kind of planning for those things, making sure we're overstaffed as much as we can be without being overstaffed in a
Balanced.
way that is starting to drain on our resources. So I would say that kind of helps the most. And just trying, like I said, get the admin stuff out as much as we can and just kind of delegating and separating duties as much as possible. Because once again, in a smaller clinic, if you have one person that's doing everything and they leave, well, now
Yeah.
you have a huge vacuum of headspace and essentially just knowledge. So trying to separate that into people to where we have redundancies built in, I think has been really important for us.
I know one good, trick or just something to do is just get on a recording of a video and just data dump, right? And so now AI is great. You can turn them into SOPs automatically, but just having that knowledge, if you do have people who are key staff, is getting them recorded and talking through their processes so you don't lose that just in case. Because, they're out sick tomorrow. What do you do? Right? And I think that's a great call out so that, it sounds like you guys are as you grow, it gets easier because you have more people that can cross train. Um,
Absolutely.
so what about, what are some of the things that are really, uh, challenging you in the industry right now? What's keeping you up at night?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the common things that we hear in the optometry field, right? I mean, it's the reduced reimbursements from BCPs, from medical insurance. I mean, it's all those things. And as far as that issue goes, we're trying to address it as trying to provide as much value as we possibly can for our patients. And so that's taking on cash pay things, to bringing in IPL and those dry eye treatments that don't rely on those vision plans has been huge for us. As well as, we still take a few of the vision plans, which we've got rid of a few of them, but really kind of changing our mindset that it's a marketing scheme, right? We get the patients in the door and then it becomes incumbent on us to talk to them about their diseases, get them in multiple pairs of glasses. And so that's one thing that we've really done, as well as really embracing the specialties of optometry. That's one nice thing about having a bigger group practice is you can bring in all the specialties that you want to. And so, we're offering, like you mentioned in my intro, we're doing myopia management, we're doing SLTs, LPIs, YAGs, we're doing lesion removals, all the aesthetics, scleral contact lenses, vision therapy. So we're doing all of those things that typically reimburse higher, as well as some things that are cash pay. So I think that is something that really is a good thing for optometry is to focus on some of those subspecialties.
And your scope of practice in Wyoming, I think usually in, more rural type states like that, you have a bigger scope of practice. I think that's true with Wyoming as well, right? You can do a lot there.
Yeah, we can. So we passed our scope of expansion bill back in 2021, and it's for the exact reasons you're saying. We're in a rural location to where at the point, there's what, 6, 7 ophthalmologists in the state. And so a lot of times we're having to send our patients out of state. So once again, it really became a thing that increased the value that we're providing to our patients and it's keeping patients in our clinic the most. And so that has been a big practice builder as well. Because now I see a patient and I'm like, hey, you have a posterior capsular opacity. Let's head next door tomorrow, and then let's get that thing cleaned up for you. So it's really improved the way and the services that we're able to provide our patients.
Yeah, I know there's another, doctor who I talked to is in New Mexico. He's not from New Mexico, but he's like, "You know what? New Mexico is a great market because of that high ability for scope of practice and pretty rural, underserved markets, great opportunities. He has multiple locations as well in Mexico. So it's interesting to see a similar model. That might be an area of opportunity for folks who are looking to maybe get into multi practices, finding locations there. Now, you have to move to places that you may not be as familiar with, but it's a trade off. I'm sure there's
Yeah.
some skiing there in Wyoming.
Yeah. I mean, as far as like just the practice happiness and how satisfied I am practicing optometry, I don't think you can practice in a better state as far as it just gives me the ability to do essentially whatever I want within reason. So it's very rewarding from a doctor's point of view too.
Yeah. I think Kentucky is another state that has a huge scope as well of practice. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting to see that because Georgia has a decent scope where we are, just not as robust. I'm kind of jealous of you. I'm such a big scope, but that's awesome that you're able to take care of it. And it goes back to your mission of taking care of the patients, right? Like if you can do it legally, you are doing it because it's important for the patient.
Exactly. Exactly.
And so let's, I guess, daydream a little bit, or not necessarily daydream, but let's vision a little bit. If you had to triple, quadruple, double, however big you want to get your business, let's say you had fast growth coming up. What does fast growth mean to you, and how would you do it?
Yeah. So once again, we grew so fast coming from our one location to this one that I always now kind of err on the cautious side of that as far as I don't want to grow too fast. Because once again, you can really get behind the eight ball a little bit if you grow too fast, where your processes really do break down. And then once again, those patients, like we just said, the word of mouth, it really spreads quickly, especially in smaller locations, smaller cities like Wyoming. So, I think it's having a coordinated plan on how you're going to do it, how you're going to implement going forward. And I think now we have that game plan. We have all of our processes, like you talked about with the AI. We have all of our processes recorded. We have, all of our manuals set up that we can simply just give to somebody
Yeah.
and then kind of make our systems work. So, yeah, it is our goal to continue to expand. It's a little different in Wyoming because once again, from city to city to city, distance becomes a thing, right? And so Laramie's the closest city, 45 minutes. And then beyond that, you're looking a couple hours. So that will always add an extra challenge, I believe. But yeah, we're definitely looking at ways to continue to grow and to bring people back to the state.
Hmm, interesting. So would you do it by locations, by expanding existing locations? What would be kind of the thought process or strategy? This is more to peek inside of your business brain. It's like, how do you think about the business?
Yeah, I think if you already have the locations, I think maximizing the current locations that you have is, in my opinion, the easiest way to do it, right? It takes way less capital. You don't have to worry about creating that entire reputation again. So just kind of expanding your current location as much as you can, I think is important. And then once you have kind of tapped out that potential, then I think moving on and opening those other clinics. And that's kind of how we approach that. We want to make sure that we have these clinics as big, as well oiled as it possibly can be, and then moving on to those next locations. And it really becomes important who you have in those locations too. Those satellite clinics, I think the doctor that you have there, I think it becomes much more important because they have to have a business mind as well, right? You have to trust them to present your model to the patients there. So I think that's where the hiring process becomes even more important when you're starting to look at bringing on these satellite locations.
So say more about that. How do you get the right doctors? Especially in Wyoming, it's not an easy location to get doctors to come to potentially.
You're correct. It is not a super easy place to get people to come back to. Thankfully, our state, we have really good programs through the university that, they'll pay a little bit of your tuition if you come back. So that really helps. But Wyoming is a special place. And I think you have to spend some time in Wyoming to be able to want to come back to it. So it's really kind of hard to look at people out of state. But once again, we'd much rather not hire a doctor than hire the wrong doctor. And so when it comes to the interview time, we have the doctors come out here and typically spend 3, 4 days with us. And so we have them sit with me and my partners, kind of go through the business part, sit with each of our associate doctors, how they work with patients, kind of observe the different areas of the clinic, how it works, and then take them out to dinner, get them out of the clinic, location, see how they are as people, talk with their spouses. And so we kind of do a really deep dive on spending that personal time with people for about 4 days to know if they're going to kind of be a right fit or not. Now, something else that we have working for us is because we serve as an externship site, a lot of the doctors that we have hired have been former externs because we get to work with them for 3 months. So we kind of know how they work, they know how we work. That has really kind of made that process easier.
That's an interesting idea. Yeah, that makes it a lot easier, especially if they're in Wyoming for 3 months, they like it, they like the environment, it's like, why not?
Yeah, it's a 3 month working interview, right? It's fantastic.
Let's, wanna shift gears just a little bit. Let's talk about you personally. I'm curious, what makes you you? Um, can you give me a story that exemplifies a formative moment for you? Could have been, like I said, when you were younger, could have been, college or right out of college, but it's something that you can point to and say like, "Oh, yeah, you know what? This is a great example why I am how I am today." Whether it's because you're patient care focused, business focused, whatever it might be. Kinda curious if you have a story like that to share with us.
Yeah, I think I have a couple. So one obviously is as far as the profession of optometry goes. So I'm extremely nearsighted. I'm like a minus 16 and a minus 12. And so I'd really been anisoconia essentially to where I couldn't wear glasses. So I was having massive double vision. I got put into contacts at like age 3 or 4, did all of the amblyopia training. So I spent a lot of time in my doc's office and he took a very personalized, caring approach with me. And it just made me realize that that's how people want to feel. I still to this day, I remember how each of those exams with him made me feel. And so that's kind of led to our practice motto, be our guest, is just once again, is that thing. I think another informative one is fourth year optometry school. I had a plan to come back to Wyoming, different city, different clinic that I'm in now. You know, it was a place that I'd worked at through high school, through undergrad, and we were really in agreement that I was going to come on and start practicing with them. Comes fourth year, I kind of get a little bit of radio silence a little bit. I reach out, and what had happened is they brought in an associate a couple years before that, didn't work out, had some major issues there. And so they were not looking to bring someone on at that point. And so obviously, having that be my whole plan leading up for those past 4, 8 years, it was kind of a shock to the system. And so, I was kind of at that point wondering, what do I do? Where do I go from? And then, I just kind of put my head down, started reaching out, cold calling other locations,
Mhm.
and met my partners now. Essentially, we're looking to bring somebody on in Cheyenne and just reached out to him and it worked out great. So I think that really just showed me that it's important to, yeah, you have your best laid plans. You always have to be ready to shift. And so, as you know, things in business, they never go exactly to plan. And if you're too rigid, boat's going to go down. And so being able to pivot, make different options, be resilient has been hugely important in my journey and our clinic's journey.
Nice. Yeah, what is it? Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right? Mike
Exactly.
Tyson. Yeah,
Exactly.
I know the feeling. I know the feeling for sure. And so let's, try and travel a little bit. Knowing what you know now, let's rewind back to 4 days after you graduated OD school. What advice would you give to your younger self that you know now?
Yeah, I think one piece of advice is look for mentors. I've gone a long ways in my career just because of mentorship, whether that's the clinical side, speaking side, the business side. I've learned so much from these other people that have come before me that, really our profession, we're all just kind of standing on the shoulders of people that came before us and continue to innovate. And I would just tell myself, look for those people earlier. Try not to do it yourself at first. Really kind of lean on those people. Now, it doesn't have to be in our industry. It could be people from, somebody that you meet at the Rotary Club, somebody that you meet at a book club, just kind of leaning on those people to help you become who you want to be. I think I would have told myself to try to do that a little bit sooner.
Nice. I like that. That's really good insight.
Yeah.
Um, and what do you do? What do you for fun? Like, what do you enjoy doing in your free time? I think we talked about a little bit before the call started, but like skiing, but what else do you like to do for fun over in Wyoming?
Yeah. Yeah. 'cause we have beautiful kind of landscapes here. So we're really outdoorsy. We love to go and ski, my wife and I. We have a 20-month-old son right now. So we're trying to get him on possibly put him on some skis this year and see how he does. But we like doing that. We're big book junkies, and so I love reading. I think we can learn a lot from whether it's a biography, people that have done business before us, taking a little bit of information from like philosophy, I think a lot of things that were present then are present now, and we can take a lot about human nature from these different ancient philosophies. So I like to do that. I like to read. And then, yeah, just we like to give back to our community. One thing that we have is for all of our doctors is that we tell them when we hire them, you need to be part of at least one community service organization just to get out, give back to the community. It just makes your soul feel good. So
I like that. So what would be some of the books that you said that make an impact on you?
So I think as far as going on the philosophy part, and that's more like a personal lifestyle choice. I think some books on stoicism are really good as far as turning your challenges into opportunities to focus kind of on your locus of control, like what can I control and what can I control, then really focusing on that. I think as far as business wise, there's some of the main books that people like to read. The E Myth, I think that's important. That really shifts your mind on not just seeing patients and working in the clinic, but working on the clinic. I think that was a huge mindset shift. I think another big one was the power of thinking big. I think that was
Yeah,
a huge one.
good one. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think just taking those big shots, why can't it be us to make the difference? Why can't it be us to build the optometry empire? Right. So I think those books have been really influential on myself.
Nice. That's one I haven't heard in optometry circles. So you're reading interesting books. So yeah, I hear that a lot in entrepreneur circles.
Yeah, yeah.
Those are big books. It's a good one. Well, if people want to get connected with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, probably the easiest way is either on LinkedIn, just look up Joe Munsell, Joseph Munsell, or, my email. I always have it out there for people. It's J Munsell, Munsell 25 at Gmail.
Okay, and we'll get all that in the show notes for you as well, so people can look you up in the show notes.
Perfect.
And so, thank you again, Dr. Mansell, for being a guest.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I'm a big fan of your podcast, and I think optometry and what you're doing, it's rising tides raise all ships, and if we can continue to learn from each other and use things that other people have done, I think it's just going to be better for the profession overall. So thank you.
Well, no, I appreciate that, and thank you, audience, for listening. And if you've learned something, laughed, please share the podcast or video with your friends and family and your colleagues. Thanks again, Dr. Mansell. This has been another exciting episode of Optometrists Building Empires. See you next time. That's a wrap on another episode of Optometrists Building Empires. Thanks for joining. For show notes and more, visit buildingempires.live. This show is proudly sponsored by My Business Care Team. My Business Care Team was born out of staffing challenges my wife and I faced together, managing multiple optometry locations. We refined our approach at Classic Vision Care and now offer our expertise to others. If you're experiencing challenges with staffing and you'd like to set up a discovery call, we'd be happy to help you and connect you with the right resources. We'll see you next time.